Very sorry for not being on time for my own Stevestream. I am dealing with a slightly colicky baby. just very slightly. She is still recovering from a whole night of pretty serious diarrhea. It's left her off her pins all day. I wanted to make sure that she was nice and settled, but I still want to offer a warning just in case. We went all day with her just sleeping next to me, recovering. No hint of her usual manic energy, and no interest in food. But I didn't want her to go without any food at all, so I fed her just a tiny bit of food, tiny bit of solid dry food, very unobjectionable for her tummy, just a little bit ago. So I want to offer a preliminary warning ahead of time that if that causes Mount Vesuvius to erupt again, I'm going to have to leave. I'm going to have to abruptly go. I don't think it will. I think I think she's probably okay, but just in case, I want to condition you. So this isn't going to be a long Steve stream anyway. I really just wanted to talk about anybody, anybody writing. Yes, indeed, Nanowrimo. We are almost at the halfway point of Preptober, which is what nano people call October when you prepare your novel, the novel that you are all going to write with me in November. I was doing prep myself, and it is not going well. And I thought, at first, I thought, well, isn't that a mortifying, that you're yelling at them every time you get in front of a camera about their own prep work and yours isn't going well. Then I thought, no, it's what the obnoxious blue check marks on Twitter refer to as a teachable moment. They don't think they have anything to learn. What they mean is that they're teaching less morally perfect people than themselves, which is everybody alive now and also in the past. Jesus, be better. I thought I could use it that way because I had three candidates for what I was going to write. And I thought that in the course of this last week, the week that's ending today, I thought that I would narrow it down to one of those three. There was what was it, The Winding of the Way, which was a sort of a bowdlerized secular version, an all ages suitable version of tentacle romance. Then there was The Fall of the Sparrow, which seemed to appeal to most of you, about an ornithologist, basically following him through his life in terms of birds, from the birds that obsessed his childhood to the birds that guided him through college to the birds that were his social or his professional life, all the way to the end of his life. And then there was a science fiction novel for New Worlds November called The Destruction of the Veii. And that one is, I mean, it's science fiction and it's got an alien study in it, but it's really about psychological obsession. That's really what the novel or the novella or whatever it is that you end up with at the end of NaNoWriMo, that's really what it would be. It's about a slightly future, a few hundred years in the future, a human alien confederation of sorts, not a big thing, not a big glitzy thing at all, that is aware of and uses and sometimes partners with an alien species called the Veii, who look human. They're taller than humans, and they are of a uniform. They look sort of androgynous. There's no way to tell the males from the females, and they have a sort of a burnished golden. You won't even say skin color because it seems more like a coating. And every biological scan that this confederation can use says that the Veinti are biological creatures. They are not mechanical constructs. But the Veinti can propel themselves through space without technology and without any kind of protection. They can go into the atmospheres and down deep into hellscape planets like Venus or Jupiter without any ill effect at all. They don't seem to be affected by their local environment. They seem utterly impervious to their local environment. They don't seem to have any weaknesses of any kind, and they don't talk much with the the beings in this confederacy, especially humans. They don't talk much. They're not unfriendly. They don't have any technology at all. But they will partner with people who do have technology to help them mine ore in unbelievably hard places to manage or conduct exploration, that sort of thing. And they seem to have motivations of their own for doing that. They don't talk much. They don't talk much. humans and the two other alien species in this confederation have sort of counted their lucky stars. No pun intended. That the Vayanti exist at all, and that they aren't hostile. They've sort of made informal partnerships with them, much to their own advantage. But one scientist, the main character in my story, my Ahab, has been obsessed with what they are from his earliest childhood. And what they are fundamentally threatens him. He doesn't know why, but he cannot rest while he does not know what they are. That story is called The Destruction of the Vae, or the Vainti. I haven't decided which one. And I originally thought of that, and I thought that's a little vague. Maybe the vivisection of the Vainti, or maybe since the destruction of the Vainti is a description of the plot, maybe I'm always against the description of a plot being the title of a work. So maybe I come up with a title, the name of a character, or something like that, or the name of a vessel. And as you can tell from the way I'm talking about this, that one got the nod from me. I thought about all three of them, and then I decided that's the one I think I want to do. Once again, NaNoWriMo rolls around, and I feel like writing science fiction. Almost every time that NaNoWriMo has rolled around and I have felt like writing science fiction, I end up not writing science fiction. I end up changing my mind at the last minute. With this case, once again, because of New Worlds November, the Bookish Bryants, their event, New Worlds November, is going to start in 2 weeks. I'm one of the co-hosts. That puts me in a science fiction frame of mind. Uh, so I concentrated on the destruction of the Vayanti and started thinking about it. And of course, despite the plot synopsis that I just gave you about a mysterious golden spacefaring race, the key amount of preparation for a story like The Destruction of the Vayanti will be constructing that federation. It will be constructing my future, world building my future. They are the most exotic feature of that future, but that future has to feel real. It has to feel completely battered down and lived in. So I started devoting a lot of attention to that, and once I was doing that, I started to realize that this book is going to end up being exactly what I conceived it as. It's going to end up being a psychological portrait of the human who becomes obsessed with the Vayanti and then obsessed with studying them and getting them to talk, getting them to reveal things about themselves, then obsessed with studying any records that he can find of civilizational encounters with the Vayanti, including Earth, and then gradually his obsession darkens until finally he wants to destroy them. He wants to break one apart on a vivisection table to find out what it is. And he, all along, does not think of himself as the bad guy. And he has voices of reason in his life. They're indifferent at first. And then as they see his obsession growing, they become more and more concerned. They try to stop him once they see that his obsession is out of control. In other words, the first mates on Pequod, there are tempering voices for Ahab. They don't do any good. There would also be empowering voices. There will obviously be people in this confederation who would very much like to have a scientist go rogue and help them try to exploit the Vayanti. And the more I thought about it, the more I thought, well, do I want to spend a whole month steadily wallowing in the worsening psychology of one character? Do I want to do that? And that reminded me, I thought I should dramatize these struggles, these internal struggles for all of you, so that you would know that I am basically like you. I would put my pants on one leg at a time if I wore pants. I am having the same struggles NaNoWriMo wise as everybody else does. Because the more I thought about that, the more I thought, now I don't really want to do that. That would be for a very depressing month. It might make for a powerful book, but I don't plan on anyone ever seeing this book. So I'm not really sure now that I want to do that. And also, I'm not 100% sure that I don't feel something else percolating. Something else percolating that is strange. Every once in a while, I do a writing project that is strange, and I lean into the strangeness. The last one I did that really was that was not for NaNoWriMo. It was for the guys at Strip Cover Lit. Years and years ago, they had a hot and sticky summer novel writing challenge where it was sort of a 3-month NaNoWriMo where you write a novel over the summer. And I decided to do a book for that called Hers the Incursion that was definitely strange. It was meant to be. It was meant to be, on one level, on the surface level, the plot level, the story of Isaac Newton. But underneath that, the strangeness, the kind of Pinchonian strangeness that I worked into the story was that at first Newton conceives of the higher mathematics that he manipulated better than anyone in his life, better than anyone in his age. At first, he conceives those things as caressing a body, which he famously never did in his life. Uh, and then as the novel complexifies and goes on, it's a real body. It's the it becomes a kind of first encounter story where he is encountering the story imagines that higher math is an alien. Not that it's an alien masquerading as higher math, but that it is in fact an alien with its own language that is constantly trying to make imperfect first contact with humans, and that Isaac Newton becomes suddenly Jim Kirk. That was an intentionally weird kind of book, and I've been thinking about that. I've been feeling that something like that is building in me. I'm worried that it is the winding of the way, that it is the story alternative about tentacle porn, because full blown no rated G version of the winding of the way tentacle porn would not work for NaNoWriMo. It's not what they want for their own rules and their own contest. I don't want to go rogue and just leave the whole thing. So so what I'm sharing with you here in this Steve stream about writing about NaNoWriMo is that we are almost at the exact midpoint of Preptober, and I am in disarray. Once again, I am in disarray. I I thought long and hard, did a lot of preliminary sketching and writing about the destruction of the Vainti, and the one thing you can't know about NaNoWriMo, it's very important if you, especially if you've never tried it before. The one thing you can't know about NaNoWriMo, no matter how much Preptober you do or Preptember you do, is what it will be like to actually write the story day to day. This gets obscured because a lot of people say, "Oh, now they start to work on it and they say, oh, now this isn't going to work." When what they're really saying is, "I feel lazy. I don't want to do this." I'm talking about if you have your self control ducks in a row. So that's not an issue. If you know that you're going to do it, then there becomes past that becomes a real question of, is this a story that you cannot write day by day, something that just won't work on a day by day level, and you can't know that about. That's the only thing about NaNoWriMo that you can't know, is how it will be to write this story day by day. So you have to try to guess. You have to try to extrapolate. I've been trying to extrapolate, and my extrapolation right now is telling me I probably won't want to go to that writing every day, right? That writing is going to be sitting there every day, no matter what else you have to do. Even I have other things to do. It's going to setting aside that time, an hour, to write 1,700 words every day in November. That's tough. You want that time to be calling to you. It, it's possible that writing a long psychological story about obsession that feels very draining to do is a more likely project when there isn't a month deadline, right? Because with the month deadline with NaNoWriMo, you absolutely have to do it. If your writing isn't calling to you, it's going to be deadly. So I don't know. Do I write the destruction of the Vainti even though I think it will probably start to feel like a chore? Or do I pick one of the other two stories that I have? Or what about this feeling that something is rising, something weird is right? But anyway, let's see what you all have to say. I've been ignoring the chat. I got upbraided by that by the other in one earlier chat that I still think about. Somebody came on and said, "Why are you even having a chat if you're ignoring the chat?" And then that person left. It was a very community conscious troll. Anyway, let's see what you all have to say here. Andrew Russell says, "Oh no, he's referring to someone else. He's not talking to me." Oh no, the Spaminator. Oh god, as if things weren't bad enough. Michael Lombardo, you should raise the stakes and go into it with a focus to self-publish on Amazon. What sells on their marketplace for $1 to $2? Well, I would sell it for $1 to $2, and I wouldn't really care about my sales. It would just be that it'd be fun to see it out there, you know. And I have been thinking about that. I know I say this every year that I'm going to publish something, but I have been thinking about it. Not just for this, but for other things. Somebody in my email just recently made me an offer to collect and make a file out of all of the writing that I have done on one particular subject Then I write a new introduction, and he does literally everything else to make it a book for $1 on Amazon. That's a pretty tempting offer. I'll be thinking about that all weekend. Uh, I don't know. AJAJK is talking with Andrew Russell. Oh, yeah, I see you having a conversation between yourselves. Oh wait, is that because I was ignoring the chat? Maybe I'm to blame. Uh, there's another post here. Your handle is so elaborately scripted that I have no idea how to say it, not even how to begin to say it. But you asked Steve any opinions on booktuber Dakota Warren. She's been in a few of Jack Edwards' videos. Never seen it. The association with my nemesis is not good, but I won't hold that against her. But I don't know that name. Alan Black says, no porn nano is disappointing. I had an idea for a romance themed saga called The Shagger of the Icelanders. I'm serious though. The I don't know that, well, maybe it is porn. That the explicit element is a key element of tentacle fiction. There's no way you can do it without that. That's why I abandoned the whole idea. Uh, oh no, Fit to Be Read is here. Oh no, did I miss the beginning? Sorry, I got tied up at Quill and Sword Medieval Reenactment Club. I don't know where you find the time. Uh, Anomic says Legends and Lattes was supposedly written during Nano. Nano has a long record of books that have gone on to get mainstream publishing contracts. It's not an idle exercise anymore. They don't hold it out as, a promise or even as a good motivation, but it's definitely out there. It's not anything that I would hold out to you. You should do it because this is a thing you should learn how to do, write without editing. You should learn how to write without editing. You should learn how to write for a deadline. Nano is a great example of both of those. Uh, Pass Van Dyke says, I would love to read all of these projects, Steve. Well, I don't know. I don't think anybody would like to read the rated G version of Nano of Tentacle Fiction. I don't think anybody would like to read that. The more I thought about it, it was the first one I abandoned because it's a compromise, and that's never good. If you're compromising your own writing project, it's all you're going to be thinking about when you're writing is, gee, I wish I could be writing this full tilt, and that's no good. Uh, Afro Sci-Fi's says, I want that sci-fi book. Do it. I'm selfish. I don't care if it's a chore for you. Well, but I do. It can't be if it just depresses me every day. It'd be one thing if I were doing that for a nebulous deadline or no deadline at all, so I could work on it when I felt like a downer. But to know that I'm going to that for 1,700 words every day. Joanna Burgess said she registered on the NaNoWriMo site. You all should register, set it all up, and then in the course of the next 2 weeks, we must decide on our projects and put up samples, title, great catchy plot description for the tagline. AJAJK said, Steve, you missed this comment. If you end up writing the sci-fi novel, then you have to publish it. Based on your short description, I have to read it. I must read it. And I'm now eyeing my Moby Dick. Well, it wouldn't be explicitly like Moby Dick because Moby Dick never actually could talk to Captain Ahab or anyone else. The Vayanti can talk, and they are perfectly aware that normal beings are interested in them. They're perfectly aware of that. There's nothing like them anywhere in creation at all. I mean, you've got these elaborate environmental protections, artificial gravity, and suits with multiple layers and uh, life support systems on your space station, and you look out a portal of special plexiglass that's 2 feet thick and sealed all over from catastrophic decompression. In other words, wherries are all around you on your spacecraft. You look out that portal and see these beautiful beings literally swimming through the void with no expressions on their faces. And your all of your senses tell you they are biological organisms. What on earth? But okay, anyway, hang on here. I'm losing the chat again. Aviation Club 172. Hi, Steve. Do you recommend any authors for their beautiful prose? How much do you focus on your prose style when you write Nano? Well, of course, I recommend Cormac McCarthy. Drunzo says, hello, Steve. What was your research project like writing your book on the Emperor Trajan? It was extensive. Very, very extensive. I drew on all the notes and sketches that I'd made when I traveled all over Spain, all over the Roman ruins in northern Spain, and then it was endless hours in Bates Hall of the Boston Public Library, the research side of the Boston Public Library, getting everything that I could find, which was a lot. It was a lot of interlibrary loan, a lot of intercontinental loans. It was a huge amount of research that, fittingly enough, it's a good point to make here, I ended up barely using. As I mentioned last time, you don't want to empty your notebook into your project, and your research, it's a huge temptation for you to do that. I ended up barely using it. Evil Joshua says, "How'd you go about plotting prepping for a project like Follow the Sparrow? Seemed tough to pre-plan such a character-focused novel." Oh no, plotting Follow the Sparrow would be the easiest one to do because each section would be a different part of his life. All of it bookended on both sides by the fact that he's remembering the whole thing from a hospital bed, presumably a hospital bed he's never going to leave alive. So it would start with that and it would end with that, and then each section would just be chronological. So that would be easy. Then I would pick the sections: childhood, uh, college, professional life, retirement. So that's four right there. I would get my computer to do the math, figure out how long that is, break that up into sections, and then break that into 1,700 word chunks per day. I would know exactly how much time I have to spend on each thing. That would be the easiest one to do. Oh God. AJK says, Steve, if Melville or Dostoevsky or whoever else didn't write because of being unhappy for a month, then where would we be? Consider your legacy, dude. Well, I do consider my legacy. I write lots of other things, but for NaNoWriMo, I prize the fun of it all. And if my nano project is a slog, how am I supposed to get on Stevestreams and give sexy encouragement to the rest of you if I'm saying, oh God, that thing? I don't know. I don't know that there's a way that I could make it fun enough for me to keep doing it. I know your point. I get your point. But I write lots of other stuff where I don't think this way. Michael Lombardo says Dakota Warren is a friend of Jack Edwards. Dakota, quote, but I couldn't talk about books. I don't read. LOL, Jack. Me neither. Neither do I. LOL. It's easy money. I don't know that you're actually quoting them, but it bothers me. When it comes to Jack Edwards, it bothers me. $20,000 a month US. The ability to pay for a New York apartment, sight unseen, up front. That kind of wealth, I don't think any of you have it. I don't have it. I've never had it. I don't think any of you have ever had it. And all of it built on the backs of lying to his audience. That about the one thing I care about him lying to his audience about, that bugs me. uh, let's see here. Matt's bookshelf is here. Hey Steve, what is your favorite genre to write novels in? Yeah, it's nonfiction, of course. It's criticism. But you can't do that for NaNoWriMo. I've thought about it. I've tried to think of a way to do that. It hasn't ever really worked. Other than that, probably historical fiction. That's probably my favorite. Edmund Karcher says, "What do you think of Lewis Bromfield?" I like Lewis Bromfield. The Spaminator. Do you use an outline when prepping? Sometimes. Sometimes they can be a cage. I think I've often said, Nano makes distinctions between plotters and pantsers, people who plot everything and people who go by the seat of their pants. And they also say that there's a middle ground for plantsers, people who have a plot, more or less structured plot, but who don't really know how they're going to pursue it until they get into the process of writing words, of typing on an open screen. And I believe that everybody is a plantser. I certainly am. So an outline, sure, but a very vague one. Like the outline that I gave for the destruction of the Vanti would be pretty much it. That would pretty much be the outline. I'd have to come up with, when you have a straightforward outline like that, you have to complicate it a little, but only a little. Andrew Russell says you could be the next Cormac McCarthy. God, thanks for the warning. And then there's this other commentator whose name I cannot read. Favorite Anne Rice book. I'm reading The Witching Hour now. Oh, you're gone. But for me, it's The Vampire Lestat. Dr. Bacon says Steve also recommends Stephen King for beautiful prose when Steve is drunk. No, even then, he just gets worse in condemning King. Leo Burkar says, "Hello, Steve. Do you like Lucia St. Clair Robson?" I do. I just recently reread, well, just recently, 2 years ago, I reread a book that I found in Vermont that I really liked. Michael Lombardo says, Dracula related. Why did Stoker use the writing prop of using journal dial entries, letters for the story, journals, diary entries, letters, and also people recording on a phonograph, which was cutting edge technology. That's exactly why, for the same reason that motivated Michael Crichton. It was his idea to keep this from feeling like a gothic story. It was his idea to make it feel very immediate, almost journalistic, cutting edge. You've got characters recording journal entries live on a phonograph record. That's amazing. That we shouldn't lose sight of the fact, because it's old technology now. We shouldn't lose sight of the fact of what he was trying to do there, and how he was, believe it or not, even though it's an era of gaslights and horse-drawn coaches and whatnot, he was trying to draw a comparison, a contrast between the old world horror of Dracula and our new technological world. That's what he was trying to do. It seems a little bit hard to grasp it now because our technology has changed. Although, notice vampire novels still do that all the time. Guillermo del Toro's books, the Strain books, do that all the time. They match technology with the ancient mysteries, the ancient mythos of vampires. In fact, at one point in one novel, I think it's the Vampire Lestat, or no, the Queen of the Damned. Lestat says, maybe with their new technology, humans could actually capture and hold me. I'd like to see them try. So it's, anyway, uh, oh, the book eclectic is here. Hi, saying hi. Uh, Alan Black says, what about an intellectually advanced spacefaring race who happen upon Earth and start criticizing its world literature? I sometimes think that describes book critics anyway. AJAJK says, Steve, since you're my dude bro mentor, oh no. I would read anything you would publish. You might have a War and Peace by Donahue on your hands. I certainly should publish something. I've been saying that for years. It's ridiculous. Self-publishing, it has no longer has the stigma that it did forever and ever when I was growing up. It's now a completely legitimate thing to do. There are all kinds of services out there to make it look really good. The distribution is easier than it's ever been. I I should really do that. And maybe NaNoWriMo, maybe early in 2023 would be the kick in the pants I need to do that. Afro Sci-Fi says favorite Philip Roth. The snark in me wants to say the last one. Not his biggest fan. Andrew Russell says, do you ever write things out of order, i.e., write something and then think that doesn't work for an opening? I'll step back earlier in the story. I do sometimes, but when you get to stuff like that, concerns like that, butt up against the fact that I don't actually have any talent. So pirouetting around like that with time or narrative technique usually is the province of people who do. So, uh, Jay Rosen says, hi, Steve. Speaking of your love for historical fiction, I started Wolf Hall 2 weeks ago before Hilary Mantel's passing. Her death, you mean? She died. She died. She's not masquerading as a man. Anyway, any reflections on her books and criticism? I think the Wolf Hall books are amazing. I absolutely love them. Absolutely love them. I just did a long, slow reread of them in Canadian trade paperbacks and was totally impressed. Uh, Dr. Bacon says, "Oh, the Strain books are very good." I agree; they are very good. Another. Oh no, your comments are moving so fast. IDIC Warrior says, "I would love for you to write travel memoir." Well, not for NaNoWriMo. Dr. Bacon says you could publish Odd Dog, Troy War, Sigh, years uh, you've been holding out on us. Uh, Drunzo is here. I am patiently waiting for Optimus, Troy War, Steve Donahue's Ulysses, and the Telemachiad, your translation of Suetonius' Life of Tiberius Caesar, and whatever else lies in the archives. I don't know what the world would make of Troy War. The rest is fairly conventional, although the world would have a lot of questions about Odd Dog, but I don't know what anybody would make of Troy War. I did not. It doesn't read like anything else that I've ever written. It just doesn't. Not even close. So I don't know. Uh, the book eclectic says, "Oh, great idea. I would also love to see you write a travel memoir." Well, travel memoirs would be a big part of Odd Dog, my memoir, if I were ever to write it. It would be 1,000 pages long, and a lot of that would be traveling. Alan Black says, my favorite Anne Rice is Blackwood Farm. I read them years ago and distinctly remember it being very atmospheric and quite creepy. I've never heard anyone else say that Blackwood Farm was their favorite Anne Rice. Dronzo mentions Odd Dog, of course, yes. Well, that's one of the things that's in the running. Leo Percara, Steve, with 2 exclamation points. You could write the war diary of your dad as a memoir biography or an edited version of it and lie and tell people is your dad's autofiction. From what little I've been able to piece together, I don't think it would be very believable. Andrew Russell says, sorry, Steve, I found Wolf Hall dragged like hell, didn't venture further into the trilogy. I kept telling myself I'll have another bash at it. You very much should. You are, in fact, wrong. It's actually beautifully done. It doesn't drag like hell. It's you should wait a while, give it another try. Absolutely. Michael Lombardo says, Cliff Notes. Do I hear Steve Notes? Perhaps starter kits for the literarily uneducated. I would say to read the books, not make notes on them. Cliff Notes too often misused that way, right? Dr. Bacon says, I remember the snippet you read from Troy War years ago. You took my things. Wonderful start. Yes, that's a paraphrase of my Achilles killing Hector. And in my story, the gods don't trick Hector. And also, crucially, in my version of the Iliad, Hector doesn't run. Hector doesn't run. He doesn't run like an effing coward. He stands his ground against Achilles. He doesn't run. Unbelievable that Homer made that decision. Just unbelievable. And when Achilles is killing him, you think that Achilles is going to say this highfalutin stuff, but instead he says, "You shouldn't have touched my things," meaning Patroclus, meaning armor, meaning because my Achilles is a completely affectless sociopath from beginning to end. But then I have a paragraph where Hector dies, where he feels himself leaving his body, and I can't write prose like that. The prose that came out, I left it the way it is, but I can't write it on my own. I have no idea where that book came from. Uh, oh, Jason Harrigan is here. Isn't it a little bit late for you, old man? Portrait of a critic as a young pup. You should write too. You know you should. The book collecting. Well, then I demand you write your memoir. Well, maybe I'll write. Yeah, I'm sure that I should give you a preview of the chapter about the hectic, erotic summer of love that I spent with Hal Clement. You probably want to see that first as I look through the window at your Hal Clement event. The Spaminator, what word processing program do you prefer to use? Nice try. Nice try, Spaminator. The minute you start talking about different word processing programs, you are trying to procrastinate. I don't use anything specific at all. I use OpenOffice, and I don't care about it. If OpenOffice went belly up tomorrow, I would use the next thing. The minute you start thinking about it, you are coming up with reasons not to do it. I don't know. That doesn't work for me. But I should have an automatic timer. Well, I should make sure that I've installed an app that shuts down all of my social media for 30 minutes at a time. But does it work? I should double check it. Well, and what if I want a workaround? What if I need to look at social media? Okay, well, there's an app that'll give me a workaround. And all of a sudden, 2 hours of writing time is gone. uh, Another commentator whose name I can't read says, you would probably get this all the time, but what happened to the Penguin Classic series you did? It came to an end. That's all. It came to an end. There are more Penguin Classics, but you doing a daily Penguin came to an end, as things do. All right. Booktube is organic. Afro Sci-Fi says, are you looking forward to Gaiman finishing Miracle Man? In a way, I actually am. I've already told my guy at the comic shop, Adam, at Newbury Comics on Newbury Street, to put aside that Miracle Man issue that's coming up, just to see. I was never a huge fan of it, but I am kind of excited. We'll see. I dread what's going to happen. I dread what is coming. It doesn't mean just Hollywood that bastardizes IPs, that bastardizes original uh, intellectual properties. Their own creators can do it too. And Neil Gaiman is forever ally shopping on social media, so he could bastardize his own work, just to show that he's on quote unquote the right side of history. I hope not, but we shall see. God bless Alan Moore. He might be nuts, but he won't do something like that. AJAJK says Hector wearing Achilles armor in their fight together, and what happens in the fight is probably my favorite part of the Iliad. Yes, I had a great time in Troy War when Achilles' mother has to go back to the god Vulcan to ask for a new set of armor. And she pleads and begs with him. She doesn't want her son going into combat without new armor, and they discuss terms. And oh my god, I have no idea where Troy War came from. I have no idea where it came from. Where she's well, I can't say it, and I don't think any publisher would take it. But they discuss terms as to what she can pay him for this armor that I said he makes out of the stretched skin of a neutron star. Uh, an Anomic says Steve's next book, an Inspector Gadget type of dog brain that is really a book critic. You're trying really hard. All of you are. I appreciate it. Michael Lombardo says, in the spirit of Friday wine and calzone stream, I'm ordering pizza, drinking Dr. Pepper, though. Whoa. Oh, don't I wish that I could snap my fingers and have 10 of you here for Friday wine and calzones? Don't I wish I could do that? Good Lord. Maybe not last night when Frida had the trots, but when she's normal, oh my God. We would find chairs or we could put pillows on the floor. There's books everywhere. We could just talk until 1 in the morning. And then to follow the scenario, I would then snap my fingers to make you all safely back at home. So I don't have to worry about anybody staggering out in the rain. I always worry about that. In a perfect world, that there would be a little doorway that is a Star Trek transporter, like the doorway sized ones in Star Trek Picard, and you would all just come here, except the Spaminator. Oh, the Spaminator's here. Oh, how awkward. I paid for Scrivener, so that's what I'm using. Yeah, you paid for Scrivener in order to avoid writing. But if it works, that's the important thing. If it works, Dr. Bacon says, is there a specific reason so many dude bros write with pen and paper and not just type out their work like the rest of us? Because it's all about affect for them. All of it is about affect. They all want to be not just their grandfathers in a grainy, scratchy photo. There's even a filter that you can put on your Instagram feed that adds scratches and divots and discolors things because they're all in love with that. They're all in love with being not just their grandfather, but they want their grandfather to be in the absolute iconic image for Dude Bro is the photograph that's taken of the team of Untouchables in the Untouchables movie, where they're all at the table and they all suddenly get really serious, and it's these old timey men in a photo. Nobody's typing on a laptop like that. No, that's when they knew how to do it. That's when they knew how to write. Naked, standing in your tub or on a red checker tablecloth or on a long yellow legal pad. Utterly ridiculous. Utterly ridiculous. And of course, nothing good ever comes of it. It'd be one thing if you that all that affectation led to good writing, but it doesn't. Andrew Russell says, "Did you ever manage to look into scheduled Steve streams?" No, I did schedule one the other day and forgot that it was private, so nobody knew about it. Ann Novella is here. When is Deb coming? Well, Deb is up in the wilds of Maine. I ask her all the time. She has her Wi-Fi fixed, so I ask her all the time, "Can we do Manatee Monday?" And it's really hard to get it to happen. It's really, really hard to do. I will keep trying. Michael Lombardo says, any comment on the cancellation of John Kent Superman series? Apart from smug satisfaction, I'm happy that it was canceled. I would like it if it were written out of continuity. Sure that there would be a way to do that. In fact, there is a way to do it. I could think of it in 2 seconds. The John Kent, the gay Superman Kent, the teenage boy Kent, the got to be a teenage boy in space in an unknown section of his life. We don't know anything about it. He was with someone who claims to be a battle scarred and slightly crazy Jor-El from the planet Krypton. Write a story in which that is not Jor-El. Of course, Jor-El does not survive Krypton. Of course, he doesn't. Write a story in which that is not Jor-El and it is not John Kent, in which an 8-year-old John Kent is still out there somewhere. Superman can go on an adventure to find him. Maybe Lois Lane can go with him. And then suddenly it's fixed. It's easy to do. It could be a 6-issue series and it'd be easy to do. And then we don't have to worry about this at all. Then it was some, alien shapeshifter or whatever that was doing this all along and not actually Superman's incredibly gay son with his pink-haired boyfriend who has pronouns. Uh, but it's not going to happen because ideologues are running the show and they will not back off. They think they're in a millenarian fight against the forces of darkness. To them, it's a moral victory for the forces of darkness that this crappy comic book was canceled. They don't think for a minute that they're doing something that's unpopular. Oh, the Book Collectic is back. I've been on Booktube for 3 years now, and I still don't know exactly what NaNoWriMo is, or however you spell it. It's National Novel Rating Month. It comes up in November every year. It's not part of Booktube. It's a worldwide event. Hundreds of thousands of people get together in the month of November on the stroke of midnight on the 1st of November and write a 50,000 word first draft of a novel in the month of November. That works out to 1,667 words a day. So you use October to prepare, hence Preptober. NaNoWriMo, there are a ton of YouTube videos about it, but it's not a YouTube event. It I believe predates YouTube. It's just thousands and thousands of people who get together to do this. And there is a definite sense of community in knowing that all of these people out there are trying this same crazy thing at the same time you are. Drunzo says everyone knows the ideal way to write is to verbally dictate your books to someone who is writing for you in quill and ink. Don't give the dude bros any ideas; they're bad enough as it is. AJAJK says I feel like Hemingway is the ultimate dude bro. God turned that scale up to 10-10 when he was made. Yeah, treats women like disposable objects. Right. Killed himself. Right. Was paraded his personal bigotries and prejudices as though they were personal strengths. Check. And also wrote The Old Man and the Sea, which is the ultimate text of all dude bro fiction. All of it. It all comes from that book. So maybe so. Dr. Bacon, have you seen Black Adam, Steve? Any thoughts based on the trailers? I have. I have a screener of it. I saw Black Adam. I really liked it, but I don't know how much of that was just that I have been saying for 20 years now that The Rock is one of the most charismatic people who has ever worked in Hollywood. He literally cannot fail a project. That's very rare. That almost never happens. I realize it's because he's sort of hewing to a very narrow scope, except for that one movie he did with Sarah Michelle Gellar, where he was I forget the name of it, but he was really good in it, and it wasn't a Rock performance. But otherwise, he pretty much plays himself all the time. Here, he is. I don't like the marketing for Black Adam. That this is somehow the hero that we get for our time now. That this is somehow what heroism is now. I don't like that at all. That kind of cynicism is completely false. Heroism is heroism at all times the same. But I really liked the movie. I thought it was really, really well done. Oh God, I'm missing lots of comments. Afro Sci-Fi says, "Do you think Doomsday Clock was a waste of time?" Yes, huge waste of time. Yeah, a huge waste of time. It's these a hard reset for all of the mistakes that DC Comics has made in its continuity in the last 15 years would not be hard to do. Doomsday Clock was one possibility for that reset. They didn't take it. They ostentatiously didn't take it. There have been others, and there could be another one tomorrow. There could be. I could think of 10 storylines like that that would give you the hard reset that all your actual fans want. You won't cater to them, though. You hate them. You absolutely hate them. So you can't give them what they want. It'd be easy to do, but they won't do it. Andrew Russell says, "Do you rate Michael Chabon? I read The Amazing Adventures of Cavalier and Clay and thought it was a well-written piece of work." Yeah, he's very good. Do I rate him? You mean do I like him? I think he's wonderful. Uh, Michael Lombardo says, "I was answering Dr. Bacon." Uh, just saw a clip of the with the JSA. Yes, Pierce Brosnan is Dr. Fate. Dr. Fate is in this. Hawkman is in this. The whole bunch of a whole bunch of characters, including a few that didn't, as far as I know, show up in any trailer. Uh, I thought it was really well done, but I don't know. I'm not quite understanding the reaction that it's getting. Uh, Leo Percarla says, "How far into the Rings of Power did you manage to watch?" I watched half of the first episode and was more than enough. I watched the whole thing. I watched uh, the conclusion to the first season and hopefully the only season just last night, and was just. I mean, I knew what to expect. I knew what was coming. I called it weeks ago, and just even so, seeing it, I could not believe it. I just could not believe it. This is what you get when earth scorching ignoramus ideologues, blue haired ideologues, take control of a beloved intellectual property, a beloved concept. This is what you get. Exactly this, where the person who teaches Gandalf that he is a good person is a woman, where the person who comes up with the idea of the Rings of Power is a woman, where the person who causes Sauron to become evil is a woman, where the person who is going to save Middle Earth in the Second Age and presumably the Third as well is a woman, where the person who understands how to mine mithril is a woman, where you right down the line, this is the Lady of the Rings. And I asked a whole bunch of friends of mine, do you actually feel validated by this? I mean, you're a woman, and some of you are old enough to have been agitating for greater representation, more three-dimensional representation for women in the small screen and the big screen for decades now. Now that you're looking at this, do you feel validated by this? And every one of them said, no, this is ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. We wanted equitable representation, not this kind of weird Jim Jones style. I watched the final episode. Yeah, it had one pretty moment. I'm not denying that. It had one pretty moment, but it presents you when it is over, it presents you with a clear choice. Do you want J.R.R. Tolkien's Tolkien, his Lord of the Rings, or this show's Lord of the Rings? They aren't reconcilable in any way. They weren't from the first episode, but now they definitely aren't. They are not reconcilable in any way. These showrunners are making Tolkien, a new Tolkien legendarium to support a new Lord of the Rings. They want it to be better. They want to improve it because it's relatively neo-Nazi right now. So you have to make a choice. Either you are one of the shills on Twitter who are saying this is the greatest thing of their lives, that it cured their son of epilepsy or whatever, or you are one of the enormous number of people, not just the neck-bearded quasi-fascists, but all kinds of Tolkien fans all over social media and in the print world are saying this is this is just this is an utter travesty. It, you just have to pick which Tolkien you want. That's all. You can't have both. Uh, the book collectic says, "Hi, David," but David is not me. Eyes on the prize. Deep in the Read says, "You talk so much about Dude Bro that I think it's high time you did a Dude Bro starter kit." Well, I did. I've done the seven deadly sins of Dude Bro lit. That got a lot of attention in all the wrong quarters. Uh, a Dude Bro starter kit might encourage. I don't want people to start a Dude Bro. It's largely a waste of time. I don't want people to do that. It's too tempting for famously aimless young men between the ages of 18 and 25 anyway, without me doing a starter kit. What would I say in the starter kit? This example is really bad. This example is even worse. No, my Dude Bro starter kit is very easy. It's not 10 items. It doesn't take a whole video. It's very easy. It's The Custom of the Country by Edith Wharton. That's my Dude Bro starter kit. Okay. AJAJK says favorite Sherlock Holmes stories. The Redheaded Lead. I'm going through the complete homes in order, and my next one is The Final Problem. I'm very excited. Yes, Professor Moriarty, who we're told in the stories has a habit of shifting his head in a threateningly reptilian way. And coincidentally enough, that's exactly the same head gesture that Nori Brandybuck makes in Rings of Power. That's all I can think about every time she does that. It's that you have discommoded me, Mr. Holmes. Dr. Bacon says, I watched the interest. Oh, no, you're gone. Sorry about this. Michael Lombardo says, there's a James Dickey biography at my library sale. Should I get it for $2? Nope. There are other things at your library sale that are worth more than that $2. I guarantee. I would know for sure if you would send me pictures, but you don't because you hate me because I smell. Uh, Afro Sci-Fi says, did you read a have you read question? Oh, 10 to 1, it'll be a book that was famous. I, the Nickel Boys by Colson Whitehead. Yes, I have read The Nickel Boys by Colson Whitehead. Yes, I have. I am a professional critic. I am a professional book critic, for God's sake. Dr. Bacon says the Dude Bro starter kit nowadays is Jordan Peterson. Oh my God. I know. And this new Jordan Peterson, the one that was told by his handlers at the Daily Wire that you should be savage, is even worse. Imagine if his legion of white t-shirt, room clearing young zombies starts to act that way. Mayberry Book Club is here. Hey, Steve, what are your favorite vampire movies? Well, number one would be Bram Stoker's Dracula by Francis Ford Coppola. I have to say that. I have to say it. It's such an incredible fever dream that I have to say it. But believe it or not, if we're talking small screen as well, the original miniseries of Salem's Lot is wonderful. Even though I don't like Stephen King, it's tough to beat the performances that go on in that movie in that miniseries. It's tough to beat it. Uh, Andrew Russell says is answering Afro Sci-Fi. I hope you aren't venturing to ask but he did ask me a have you read question, and it wasn't just a have you read question. Or I should say it was a have you read question because all have you read questions are the same. They're always have you read The Actress by Anne Enright? Have you read some book that everybody talked about, that every critic reviewed? It was The Nickel Boys by Colson Whitehead. It was some have you read questions are probably inevitable, but ooh, they rankle. They do. But I can't help but notice. I know I've got a lot of stuff to read here, but I can't help but notice this live stream. I gave you no preparation. I gave you an hour's preparation, and it doesn't have any special effects. Doesn't have any. There's nothing added in. There's no editorial stuff. It's just me nattering about books and talking about your comments as you raise them. And there are 84 people watching right now. I watched a tech show, a tech channel, did a live stream yesterday. They did 2 days of warning. The announcement video was up for 2 days for people to set their clocks and know when it was coming. And they have hundreds of thousands of subscribers. And the most people who are watching that stream at any one time was 37. So what's going on here? Is what I want to know. What's going on here? Anyway, I don't expect any of you to have the answer, but I don't have the answer. The Book Collectic is back. Oh, that reminds me. Where are you on Lestat? You haven't posted an update. I think I was waiting for Matthew to post an update, and I don't remember seeing one from him. I may be behind. The Dr. Bacon says, "How about the new Interview with a Vampire TV show?" Well, I have a screener for a bunch of it, but I haven't watched it. Uh, I watched Black Adam and felt like it was a huge accomplishment. And there was one other thing. There's one other screener that I want to get to. Oh, what is it? Oh God, it looked really interesting. I don't remember it off the top of my head. Uh, Michael Lombardo says, "Well, picked up Dutch by Edmund Morris at the sale on Wednesday. I knew that was a Steve approved. It was indeed. What a book. A View from the Bar is here. Did you notice a change in the prose style of your peers as they were switching to word processors? Fellow 28-year-olds, you mean? They all had word processors to begin with. My peers? What does that mean? Oh, oh, somebody mentions a Jack Edwards stream, but I can't read the rest of it. Can't believe you people are bringing up my demon nemesis." Ann Novella says, "We are drawn by your smell." Mayberry Book Club says, "You're behind." Are you saying that I owe you a video, or are you referring to my incredibly famous posterior? Uh, Dr. Bacon says, "We love you, Steve." Simple. All right. Well, I appreciate that, but there's got to be another reason. There's got to be I was thinking about that while I was one of those 37 people watching that tech live stream. Granted, when you do a live stream, a lot depends on how well you can speak extemporaneously. And I am willing to admit, without any overweening egotism, that I'm better at it than a lot of people are, but not that much better, considering the differences in their subscriber base compared to mine. Either they were posting remarkably low numbers, or I'm posting remarkably high numbers, and I don't. Anomic says the algorithm, you never know what you're going to get. That might be true. It might just be the mystery of the algorithm. Oliver Anderson says, "We're here for Frida. Frida's right next to me. She's not on her perch because she's feeling poorly. She had diarrhea all night long. So just she's been a shadow of herself all day." Oscar Mendoza says, "Oh, no, you're gone. Something about the Emperor Constantine." Leo Percara says, "You're too handsome to miss." Their glaucoma acting up again. I see. Brenham8 says, "Good evening, Steve. On the subject of ROP, since the days of Adam, there has been hardly a mischief done in this world, but a woman has been at the bottom of it." William Makepeace Thackeray and Barry Lyndon. I'm not. I'm not asking the showrunners to go that far, but this is ridiculous pandering. Utterly ridiculous pandering. Nothing happens in the story that isn't the idea of a woman. Nothing is pushed forward in the story unless it's pushed forward by a woman. If that were done with men, it would and has been rightly decried as sexism. Uh, Andrew Russell says, "Would you ever rejuvenate the Has Steve read trend, or do you think it has run its course?" I'm not going to rejuvenate it. No. Deep in the Read says, "I think the reason is that your streams are way more conversational, interactive than most other streams. You read almost every comment, except for the ones I miss." That could be true. The bigger channels, I noticed the one I watched yesterday, he could easily have read all the comments. There weren't that many, and he didn't do it at all. Maybe that's it. Uh, View from the Bar says, "Have you told the masses yet that I'm assembling an ebook of your presidential pieces, Steve Donahue's United States?" Well, we're not going to call it that, but no, I mentioned earlier in this Steve stream that such a project had been floated. It's a massive offer on your part. I don't know quite. I'm still reeling from it. I'm still trying to figure out what it is. Well, I guess we can discuss it when you come for a visit. Yeah. Anyway, this person is back whose handle I cannot read. Random thought, but it amazes me that books today are advertised as being TikTok sensations. I know. Can you believe it? A whole table at Barnes and Noble with a sign that says popular on TikTok. It's just boggles my mind. I mean, TikTok is like the Jack Edwards phenomenon, only on steroids. AJAJK says Steve, Huck Finn, and the Prince are apparently not approved by Jack Edwards. This is from the classics tier ranking video of his with Harry Potter on the thumbnail. Yes, his classic tier ranking video that has had more views than anything on Booktube, than all the rest of Booktube put together. By a nattering hairdo with 5 pounds of hair gel on his head, who hasn't read any of the books he's talking about. Oddly, just a tier ranking system for 100 classics he hasn't read. Michael Lombardo says, you must remember the sex bots are a large part of your viewership, and I appreciate them. I'm assuming that Ann Novella is one of them. And what else would explain the Spaminator? Surely he is a sex bot. But that can't be the only reason. I was seriously, we're up to 85 people here with no advance warning, no concrete subject, no giveaways, no form, no edits, no nothing. When I watched a tech live stream yesterday, and this is already 3 times their viewership. What on earth? What on earth explains that? Anyway, Andrew Russell says, you are very easy to chat with, Steve, and aren't focused on yourself, unlike that bloody Jack Edwards. Hence the success of your streams. Well, I like to think of these as the closest we're ever going to come to all of you being here in the room on a Friday. Forever and ever, I used to have people over on Fridays. That happened forever and ever for decades. I would have people over on Fridays for wine and calzones. They'd be all around the room, and we would just talk until the wee small hours. And then I just had to worry about them getting home. That's all. That was a lot of fun. I missed that. But I'm not sure that the chat. Anyway, and Novella here. They only read those paid super chat comments. Yeah, I don't have a super chat. Who knows how much brattle money I could be making if I did, but I have no idea how to set it up, and I wouldn't do it anyway. Besides, it would all be the Spaminator. Jeff Daniel says, Steve, what do you think about the prospect of Julian Assange being extradited to the USA? Uh, it 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 ties in with what I think is coming to the United States in the next 2 years. And since none of you believe me because you haven't acted on it, I'm assuming that you don't want me to go on and on about it. That's all. America is about to fundamentally change. Julian Assange will be the smallest detail of that fundamental change. Andrew Russell says, I would laugh if Jack Edwards joined this stream right now. I don't think I could save him. I don't think I could. If I'd met him when he was on the cusp a year ago, when he had no Booktube channel and no subscribers at all, he got 1.5 million subscribers in a year, $20,000 a month. Think how that changes someone. If I'd met him when he was just an ordinary college student who was thinking just as much about maybe starting a career in fashion modeling as he was anything to do with books, I might have been able to help. I might have been able to remind him that it is right to be honest and wrong to be dishonest. But if dishonesty is getting you $20,000 a month, and a completely bought and paid for apartment in the downtown New York City in Union Square, good Lord, then there's no talking somebody back from that, I don't think. Leo Percara says, not only you read all the comments you can, but you have a good answer to every single one of them. And you talk with candor and modesty. How many YouTubers do that? The talking extemp, I don't know about modesty. Not many people accuse me of that. But the modesty, not the modesty, the extemporaneous talking is rare. The kid who was doing the tech live stream could not have done what I'm doing right now to save his life. Maybe that's why he didn't try. But there, I assume, are plenty of people out there who can, and it confuses me. That's all. Deep in the Read says, you're also able to trick us into complimenting you by asking, why are you so many of you here? I'm not fishing for compliments. I promise I'm not. Well, it'd be nice. But I'm not fishing. I literally don't understand it. That's all. I don't know. It's probably, somebody commented that it's the algorithm. There's the mystery of the algorithm. That could be. AJAJK says the Art of War is also not sanctioned by Jack Edwards. Well, the new translation of the Art of War from W.W. Norton has a wonderful cover blurb. Maybe that would change his mind. The Spaminator is here. The simple fact that you make an effort to be personal and friendly makes a difference. Booktube streams are the ones I make an effort to. Oh, I missed the rest of your comment. Hugo Simeo says, Steve, what should we expect from Trump's testimony in the January 6th committee? He's not going to testify. There's no way. He said that. I'm sure that he said that just to fire up his base. Somewhere in his life, someone has to have the ability to tell him that if he commits perjury in the well of the Congress, he could be arrested right on the spot. There wouldn't be any going back to Bedminster and dragging things out in an appeals court. He could be arrested right on the spot for contempt of Congress. And it wouldn't matter who he was or where he was. He has to know that he can't do that. But if he does go, if by some weird chance he does go and gives testimony, he'll just claim the Fifth Amendment the whole time. And it doesn't matter anyway, because this committee is doomed. This whole inquiry is doomed. When well, anyway, let's see here. Afro Sci-Fi says favorite Ian Banks culture novel. Isn't the standard answer I'm supposed to give here consider Phlebas? Am I supposed to say that no matter what? Isn't that everybody's answer? Uh, Somebody said Trump should not be allowed to run. Very simple. Well, keep in mind, he's not going to be running, right? He's not interested in being president. Let me see here. I'm missing so much of the chat here. Oscar Mendoza says, any thoughts on the booktuber Benjamin McAvoy and his videos on the classics? I like them. He. I could be wrong about this. I haven't done a deep dive into his channel, but he strikes me as one of those booktubers who does have a wall up and is mainly just presenting to you, but doesn't want really any interaction with you. And those tend to, if I'm right, that's the impression that I get from watching his channel, the few videos that I've seen. And booktubers like that don't interest me. They don't interest me enough to keep coming back. I like the people who are acknowledging the community aspect here that I love so much. Uh, Michael Lombardo says, has book Zero Fail about Secret Service ever crossed your desk? Is that Michael Lombardo's way of asking a have you read question? There is no way to ask a have you read question. Okay, there is no acceptable way to do it. I have read it and I liked it a lot. Andrew Russell says, I think Jack Edwards' skill is being able to say nothing at all in depth about a single book while convincing his audience that he knows that he's talking about all the age of 12. Look at the comment section of one of his videos someday if you haven't already. It's unbelievable the loyalty that he inspires. I argue, my opinion is that 90% of that is that he's cute. I talked to him at all. Of course, he's not going to show up in this Stevestream, but I'd be willing to bet that 90% of his viewership rates as teenage girls. 90%. It's Charlie McDonnell and Alex Day all over again. I'd be willing to bet that that is the reason here, but you can't say that, right? Because if I say that, I'm a bitter old guy with smallpox scars from 1872. I think it's true, though. I think if he looked like I do, he'd have 13 subscribers. If he was saying the things that he was saying, he'd have 13 subscribers. Uh, let's see here. Sculptor is here. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not ladies and gentlemen. Eyes on the prize. They don't matter. Okay? They're just a crowd of transphobe incels. I'm the one who matters. It's good evening, Steve. AJK says, you responded to my Sherlock Holmes comment earlier. I too love the Red-Headed League. Such a fascinating premise. Such an incredible turnaround in the second half. Not to mention the weird comedy. Yes, one of the moments in the Red-Headed League that always pleases me is that Holmes and Watson cannot contain their mirth at the plight of Jabez Wilson. Even with him sitting right there in the room, they can't stop themselves from giggling a little. That if that hadn't been there, too often in murder mystery shows, in murder mystery novels, the client presents an utterly ridiculous scenario and there isn't any incredulity. And so I really like that. But oh my God, I'm missing the book collector says, have you read? Just kidding. Don't poke the bear, Missy. Have you read questions are traumatic for me. AJK says, if I manage to convince my English teachers that I was an expert on certain books which I hadn't read, then Jack Edwards should easily be able to manage a bunch of infatuated girls. They think he's cute. He is cute. I think it's a huge amount of what his success rests on. That, and also, I don't know if you've noticed, but there are certain people who talk about books on Booktube who make them very warm and comforting, very fuzzy. That, this is a pillows and pajamas, popcorn, book club late night chat in the basement that everybody wants to join because it's nice and fuzzy and comfortable. There are booktubers. He's not the only one. There are plenty of booktubers who do that, and that is often a ticket to success on Booktube. Simon Savage, another perfect example of that. And I don't do that at all. Books are an arena of combat for me. So are you not entertained? And that comes through. And I think that's much more interesting, but that is not the way to massive crowd appeal, not at all. Andrew Russell says, "Did you hear about Robbie Coltrane's death? Any thoughts on his acting output?" I did hear about his death, and I like his acting output. I haven't looked online on Twitter to see the superlatives. They will be insane. They will be ridiculous. He was a fairly limited actor. I thought he was pretty good. It's a long just talking about Cracker alone would take me a long time to sort of break down. Sorry though, I don't think we're going to get any more work out of him, but still. Uh, Michael Lombardo says the author was on NPR this afternoon commenting on SS having multiple tips on January 6th beforehand. No action. Oh, the author of Zero Fail. Yeah, that well, you knew that if the Secret Service frantically is lying about having lost a bunch of the most important messages they've ever received in their institution as an organization, then you know that they were involved and had something to hide. That's never accidental. The whole story of this thing will never come out. Unfortunately, the whole story of January 6th will never come out. Uh, uh, let's see here. Andrew Russell says Simon Savage is bit too fuzzy for me. Oh no, now you're gone though. Oh my god, look at how fast these things are going. Flora should be reading. Glad to catch this stream. A little off topic, I know. But what did you think of? Oh no, something was it something about the Rings of Power? I missed it completely. Oh god. Uh, it- oh, here we go. But what do you think about Sauron twist in the last episode of the Rings of Power? It's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Sauron is a spurned incel. That's absurd. Utterly absurd. Just if you're a Tolkien fan, you will no longer watch this show. And if you praise this show, you are not a Tolkien fan. They flirted with that dichotomy for 7 episodes, but there's no avoiding it now. Tom Ellie Books, yay! Good to hear you talk about your YouTube and looks. The undeserved natural social success of good-looking people is amplified 1,000-fold by YouTube. I tend to think that is true. I don't know, but it's the undeserved part that bothers me just a little, not a lot. In Jack Edwards' case, it is certainly undeserved, but there are some YouTubers, maybe not booktubers, there are some YouTubers who are very good looking who have success. I'm feeling I'm feeling. I mean, Marcus Brownlee is a gigantic tech channel on YouTube. He's astonishingly good looking, but he's also really good at what he does. I can't help but think that his astonishing good looks helped people to like coming back to his channel, but he still had to provide the goods. It's the ones who don't do that, who are just relying on how they look, that I shouldn't talk about tech channels. I should restrict myself to people like creatures like Jack Edwards that just drive me nuts. Um, uh, Jeff Daniel says, "What is your favorite Mel Brooks film?" Are you trying to get me into trouble? Are you trying to get me to quote from or perhaps sing from Blazing Saddles? Because I will, you know. Another comment, I can't read the name, says, "I haven't even read any Hoover books, and I already know they all have the same romanticization of abusing men plot. And she's crazy popular on TikTok." Yes. Yeah. She's a whole phenomenon on her own. I've often thought about writing a column about her. I write a weekly column, a weekly books column that I would love to see in your local paper. Uh, but my readers are normal, ordinary readers. They wouldn't be interested at all. That's why haven't done it. Uh, Afro Sci-Fi says Burns Superman or Morrison's. Which do you hate more? Morrison's, but by a thin margin. They're both bad, really bad. Jack O'Hara says, "Do you find Mary Shelley's life very interesting, Steve? A biography of her written by Miranda Seymour is currently at my local used bookstore. Not sure if I should go back and get it." Miranda Seymour's book is really good. I don't think, in its bare bones, Mary Shelley's life is all that interesting. Can't say that in public. You'd be branded, a transphobe or an Islamophobe or whatever. I don't think it's all that interesting, but the book is fantastic. You should definitely go back and get it if it's cheap. Skolder says, "I stopped watching Rings of Power at episode 3. Could not stand it. Anyway, the thing costs $1 billion. Where did the money go? Is this series money laundry scheme? People actually started legitimately asking that question after episode 3. I was asking it in episode 1. When the ice on the ice wall, one of the first things we see looks terrible, looks rubber. I was asking it right away because of how bad this thing looked. And I don't know about money laundering, but there are all kinds of questions I want answered. I can't help but think that a gigantic amount of the money that this is purported to have cost went into simply buying off the Tolkien estate and not into the special effects that you see on the screen. The special effects in House of the Dragon are better for half the money. So it certainly didn't go into special effects. They didn't hire any actors who have the name recognition or the presence enough to carry off the role. Not the writing. The writing certainly didn't cost them that. Uh, Andrew Russell says, "Come on, Steve, a rendition of Springtime for Hitler would be great." I am from Dusseldorf. That is why they call me Rolf. Michael Lombardo says, "How does the Reclaiming History reread? Did you rip the CD files of your tablet to your tablet for easy reading?" Couldn't actually get the CD files to work anywhere. But I am deep in the book, and I think I'm going to do a JFK assassination literature video, maybe even a starter kit. I'm thinking strongly about that so that I don't waste the reread. Uh, Duncan McCurdy says Robbie Coltrane's acting career doesn't really matter. He establishes icon status for one generation with Cracker, and then for another with Hagrid. Yeah, I'm thinking about. I mean, Hagrid basically anybody could have done. I'm thinking about Cracker and maybe his cameo in Henry V, but mainly Cracker. And Cracker, dude, it's a really good show, but he's the worst thing in it. He's the most compelling thing in it, but he's also the worst thing in it. He's I don't know. It's a long, like I mentioned earlier, it's a long story for me to talk about just that show alone. Uh, AJK says, Steve, unrelated question, but did you have any thoughts on the NBA Draymond Green fight, or have you not heard of it? I've not heard of it. No. Jack O'Hara says, "Well, I'm in New Zealand, so even in a used bookstore, it's not cheap." I know, Australia, New Zealand. What's going on? What's going on with those countries and their hatred of books? I just don't get it. Dr. Bacon says, "Makes you wonder about the cost of many of these things. Where'd the money go for Thor: Love and Thunder? Looks terrible, terrible movie. I don't know. I'm not quite sure. I'm not willing to go, the full conspiracy theory money laundering idea, but I don't know. I don't know. It doesn't make any sense to me. I'm just I think a lot of fans out there of science fiction, fantasy, any nerd related stuff. I in confronted with all this stuff that doesn't make any sense to me. I am gradually just teaching myself not to care instead of hoping that the next thing will be any good. And that I don't know if Hollywood, big screen or small screen, realizes how dangerous that is. If you teach a whole demographic, your core demographic, to simply not care about this stuff anymore because they know you're gonna bastardize it, you won't have an audience. There's no backup audience that will re-see the new Star Wars movie over and over again. Uh, Andrew Russell says, "Do you have any preference in Netflix versus Prime?" Oh no. I have both. I don't know why they just get monthly debited, but I never watch them. Insane. I should make a point of watching them, but when I sit down to do it, I think, oh, there are all kinds of books that are waiting for you. They're all more entertaining than this crap. Elizabeth Power says, "I like reading about the personal lives of all the authors on Wikipedia because you get to know all their personal business. I would not want people overanalyzing my life after my death." Look to your browser history then, I would say. When's the last time you cleared your browser history? Do you even know how to do it? Might want to think about that. uh, uh, Afro Sci-Fi says, "Favorite current writer in comics? Not a one." Uh, oh, something about Shakespeare I missed. Elizabeth Power's back. "Have you ever seen the TV show Slings and Arrows? It's about a bunch of actors who work in a Shakespeare festival in Canada." I watched a bit of it. I don't know it at all. Michael Lombardo says, "Are you a fan of Doc Martin with Martin Clunes? I love his temperament in that show." Yes, he's very good in that show, but what is going on with his temperament in that show? Why is he like that? I just something about it. Maybe it's just me being oversensitive, but Something about it gets my hackles up. I feel like I'm being played. I The Spaminators here. Not caring is the best policy. Oh my god. Wouldn't it be terrible if that were true? And yet I think if you care about Star Trek or Star Wars or Lord of the Rings or anything, any of these imaginative things that you grew up on, I think that simple line, not caring is the best policy, is going to be the only way. You can't stop these things from being made. It's entirely possible that Rings of Power, the Lady of the Rings, is making a whole generation of people who will call themselves Tolkien fans and who think this is legitimate. That's, uh, Scolder says, honestly, Amazon has enough money to invest in biomedical research to bring Shakespeare back to life. They decided to hire teenagers to write the script. Well, yeah, they're in the entertainment business. If they poured half of their proceeds every year into biomedical research, we wouldn't have Alzheimer's anymore. That's a whole other conversation. Dr. Bacon says it's just that, for example, we're 20 plus years on, and Gollum from the Jackson Lord of the Rings film today looks better than so much CGI nowadays. Yes, because A, it was made with care, and B, it's possible that none of the money that is being associated in the popular press with the Lord of Rings of Power actually was spent on special effects, which automatically raises the question, well, then what was it spent on? Let's see here. AJJK says, Steve, do you like Doctor Strangelove? It's one of my favorite films. Do I like Doctor Strangelove? That's virtually a have you read question. Of course I do. Of course I do. Uh, Longbow X MKLL. I don't know that name. Have you ever watched The Boys, Steve, or read the comics? The show is better than the comics by a good margin. The show is better than the comics, and I really like the show, but you know already, I don't like the premise of the show. I don't like the idea of it at all. I'm watching the show for the same reason everybody else is, to see what sudden violence happens, and for Giancarlo Esposito. But I don't like this cynical idea that heroes can't be good. The Boys is the antithesis of the Adventures of Superman from the 1950s. So I'm not going to be totally on board with it, of course. Afro Sci-Fi says, I heard Worf is a pacifist in the new season of Picard. Yes. Yep. Uh, I'm Keep in mind what I predicted. I predicted it months ago. I'll repeat it here because this video will be on my channel. The original crew of the Star Trek: The Next Generation is being brought together in order to desecrate them. They're being brought together by the ideologues who are writing the show in order to desecrate them. That is the reason they're doing it. That's not just one of the side effects. That's the reason they're doing it. The men in that cast must be desecrated. So just prepare yourself. I would say don't watch. Spaminator's rule might be right. Not caring is the best approach. Booklectic says season 3 of Enterprise depressed severely for 4 days. I'm totally immune to disappointment now. We'll see. Are you indeed? We'll see. We'll see. The next big screen trilogy of Lord of the Rings, not Rings of Power, but the actual trilogy. We'll see how immune anybody is to disappointment when that shows up. Dr. Bacon says Amazon shows have a sketchy history with CGI anyway. They hilariously had a CG a year on the actor that played Reacher. Guess he couldn't get there with his acting. Dr. Bacon says, and the tear looked terrible, I should mention. Longbow says he is a pacifist, but he also headbutts someone in the trailer. So the ideal reading would be that Worf is a bad pacifist. We would like that. Fans would like that. But I don't think that's what we're going to get. I would not want to be Worf or Riker in that show. AJK says, I'm watching Next Gen right now. No way Worf has been made a pacifist. Well, you don't have to watch. This is the final season of Star Trek Picard, and you don't have to watch it. It's such a huge draw for Star Trek fans to see their original crew. A lot of people that I know came to love Star Trek through the Next Generation, not the original series. These people are finally back together in their old roles. What an amazing draw that is. I feel so sorry for those people. They haven't quite had their own beloved IP desecrated, but that is what's coming. No doubt about it. Uh, uh, Hugo says thoughts on La Fontaine. I'm reading a beautiful edition with Dore illustrations. Oh, that'd be a nice edition to have. Oh, I'm missing comments though here. Longbow says, I think too nowadays that CGI looks bad because so many shows slash movies require it, that companies are spread so thin. Michael Lombardo says, totally on topic. What's your process for plotting a 50,000 word story? I've seen people with a cork board full of colored index cards to keep track. I don't think that's quite necessary, but maybe I think that because I've done this so many times, it might be convenient for you to keep track of where everybody is from minute to minute in your story and who they are and who they know and who they don't know. Just don't lean on that to the point where you're more concerned with getting your corkboard right than with writing. That's the problem that I have with author tube channels that advocate that kind of approach, is that a lot of them look like they're in love with organizing, not with writing. The point of NaNoWriMo is to get you writing. Not so anything that gets in the way of that, just get rid of it. Alan Black says, I love how these live streams always start with the best of intentions about NaNoWriMo and end up descending into Rings of Power. Yes, well, Rings of Power is gone now. Amazon says that they are hard at work filming season two, but they also say that season two won't be aired until 2025. If they do the right thing, they will simply let this die. They won't bring it back, but they won't do that. They're committed against the hordes of darkness, which is, I might add, you and me. It's not the bad people. It's us that they consider the forces of darkness. So it will be back, but it won't be anybody. Nobody will be talking about it in between then and now, including me. Uh, Afro Sci-Fi says Michael Chabon should have stuck to writing books. Well, he is writing another book, but I think you mean Discovery. You're talking about his or Picard. You're talking about his involvement with Picard, maybe. Andrew Russell says, I may be destroyed in a sheet of flame here, but why is it important to preserve the legacy? Can we just accept it for what it is? It's all art. Nothing is objective, blah, blah, blah. Because it's not a legacy. It's the writing of one man. J.R.R. Tolkien was his name. He wrote a book. You that's so you're not preserving a legacy. It's something that's been adapted and handed down from generation to generation. You're preserving a book. If you wrote something for NaNoWriMo and somebody came along and wrote its exact bastardizing opposite with all your character names, if you're going to adapt a book even loosely, that's the reason to preserve the legacy, is because that's what you're doing. And you do it even if you're talking about it just in practical empirical terms. The only reason you're adapting it is because it has built-in popularity and you want that popularity. That's the price you pay. If you want to share that popularity, the price you should pay is that you adhere to that lore. And that's totally out the window now. So, Booklectic says, that's why I'm watching Picard season three. I want my crew again. Well, you're going to get your crew. I don't think you're going to like what's done with them. Edward Gibbons says, Steve, should Amazon hire me to write Rings of Power properly? No, they should, but they won't because you're one of the bad guys. What was it that one of their shills said in an article just the other day? Manifestly evil. Manifestly evil. So they won't do it. They will either let it drop or they will continue on in the course they have set, where this is entirely about a super race of supernatural beings called women. So a florist suddenly becomes a military commander of an entire village. No one questions it. Where an elf, a normal elf, an ordinary elf, can be struck dead on by the pyroclastic flow of a volcano erupting and be not only alive but uninjured. Anyway, Scoldger says about plotting. I am a hyper plotter, but I almost never put anything on paper until the time to sit and write because I have the uncanny ability to remember it all. Well, mental plotting is an uncanny ability. I've known lots and lots of professional writers who couldn't do that. Dr. Bacon says, Steve, did you see the beautiful new Silmarillion coming out in the companion to the gorgeous Lord of the Rings hardcover you got last year? It's so beautiful. Yes, it's very pretty. Has Tolkien illustrations and everything. Very much worth getting, all you Tolkien fanatics out there. Very much worth getting. I think I'm getting a copy from the publisher. I don't want to browbeat them, but I think I am. I think I'm getting a copy of that and The Fall of Numenor. Elizabeth Power says, I like trying to do NaNoWriMo. I have never won, but it is fun to just write something without caring where there or not it's good. Well, NaNoWriMo, yeah, in addition to whether or not it's good, NaNoWriMo also creates, it strengthens lots of really important reflexes. The first of which, as I've said, is to stop yourself from editing while you write. You cannot do NaNoWriMo if you're editing while you write. You shouldn't edit while you write anyway. But also, you've got a deadline. You're learning how to work on a deadline. They're second nature to me, like breathing. But a lot of people don't have never written on a deadline before, and that it's important to know that. Jeffrey Clark says, Steve, what do you think about Gregory Maguire's books? I've never heard you review them. Yeah, I've never mentioned Gregory Maguire's books on my channel at all. I like Wicked quite a bit. I haven't really kept up with them after that, but I thought Wicked really deserved the praise that it got. Uh, that reading guy says, will you be doing videos on the Vampire Lestat this weekend? You missed last weekend. I guess I did. Matthew at Mayberry Book Club was just on here and said that I missed last weekend. I'll have to check what the video. I didn't see a video from him. I was just waiting. I was going to let his video be sort of my starter pistol, and I must have missed it. So I will make sure to do that and not miss this weekend. Alan Black says the problem with living on the other side of the pond is that these wonderful live streams are way past my bedtime. Have a lovely day / evening. Well, we have to wrap this up anyway. This has been going on for an hour and a half, and we have to wrap this up anyway. I mean, good night to you, but we all can't stay anyway. Although I still have my questions. I know I was accused of fishing for compliments. I swear I'm not, but this mystifies me. This live stream was unplanned. It is totally amateur. There's terrible lighting. There's no structure. There are no giveaways. There are no calls to action. There was no announcement ahead of time. And we haven't dipped below 75 people in an hour and a half. There are live streams that I see by lots and lots of bigger channels that don't do this. Anyway, the Spamnator says, I want the works we love preserved, but no one gives a you know what. We're in the minority and resistance is futile. Uh, Edward Gibbons says, who would you have given the Nobel to? I'd have given it to Ngugi wa Thiong'o, who probably will not live to see it now. I would have given it to him instead. I think his work is just infinitely more impressive than the woman who got it. I love to think of, oh, no, I missed it. Michael Lombardo, have you thought of Steve's take on a modern Regency romance as a writing project? Yes, romances are always on my short list for a NaNoWriMo. I just never do it. Dr. Bacon says, we'll soon reach a time where Beowulf is redone with a new cast to fit the politics of today. Maybe not. They don't even read anymore. Watch and see. The classics are not exempt. The biggest thing that you should be preparing yourself for is a new Lord of the Rings trilogy, where the Nazism of the past is corrected, thanks to the perfect moral vision of the showrunners. It's just lucky that we have this group of people who are among us now who are morally perfect. So they get to fix the mistakes of the past. They get to fix that. That's what the Rings of Power is. It's these showrunners fixing Tolkien. That's what they think in their mind, that they are fixing the Lord of the Rings. It's just astounding to me even to say it. But Booklectic, I'm packing my pajamas and heading to your house for an all-night pajama book party. Who wears pajamas? That reading guy, you are fun to interact with. No offense, but other people are boring. I am not boring. I will give you that. I am not boring. Michael Lombardo says, I got a notification, so you must have planned for this earlier. Well, an hour early. That's not much. The tech channel I'm talking about had an announcement up for 2 days with new notifications pushing every 24 hours. Elizabeth Power says, I approve of the description of women as supernatural creatures. Speaking of which, thank you for reading Dracula. I've had a great time listening to it with your side, your commentary. I can't stop the commentary. I've tried and I can't do it. Andrew Russell says, do you ever write stream of conscious prose, Steve? Do you have any thoughts on this literary device? It's dumb and I don't ever do it. Geo Craftsman says, coming in 2023, Beowulf fights Grendel's transphobic father. Beowulf is a woman. Anyway, Elizabeth Power, sorry for my atrocious grammar in these comments. I'm doing it with text to speech and I need to be more careful. I assumed it was something like that. It's no big deal. Deep in the Read says, oh, speaking of Thiong'o, I'm reading Devil on the Cross by him and finding it a bit heavy-handed. Is not one of his better novels? Is it not one of his better novels? And do you have a favorite from him? He's a heavy-handed author. You sort of have to, you can't expect that won't be there. You have to look around that at what else is going on. He's been pretty heavy-handed since he was in his 20s. Wizard of the Crow, It's a big book. It's a big undertaking, but you might like it a lot. I do. Dr. Bacon says, did you watch She-Hulk or hear about the finale? Good God, terrible. I watched it. Yep, and the finale. Yep. Michael Lombardo, I'm so tempted to grab the Blu-ray set of Lord of the Rings in case there is a George Lucas-esque redo a la Star Wars trilogy. My guess would be, based on what I've heard, that you have about 5 years to do that. Certainly the speculation is that all of the old Blu-rays will be scrapped or no longer be in production when a new Lord of the Rings trilogy is produced that is correct, that is improved. Uh, Skolder says in the new Lord of the Rings trilogy, Frodo's blue-haired Twitter revolutionary. Sauron's plan to make everyone a cis white person. You can see seeds of what you're going to get in the Rings of Power. The orcs are all white. There's no chance that they can look any other way. All of the agency everywhere on every level of every single plot line comes from women. The men are all duplicitous. They are all weak. They all spout empty platitudes. Celebrimbor, the greatest smith of the elven race outside of Feanor. It, it's, you can see very strong hints of what's coming in the Rings of Power. But we have to wrap this stream up. Keep in mind, I said that 10 minutes ago. We have to wrap this stream up. Colo Colo 1546 says the next disaster will be Sony's recently acquired Tarzan, which will probably end up being the new adventures of Jane. you It's not hard to do this. It's not hard to estimate what's going to happen here. Look at the most iconic popular fantasy science fiction intellectual properties. All of those are giant bull elephants on the African savannah, and the ideologues who are hunting these things only want heads on the wall. They are not interested in the properties at all. Not at all. All they want is to fan bait. That's all. And they can do it. They own these things, so they can absolutely do it. The way to stop it from happening is for any kind of viewership, any kind of audience, to wholesale desert this stuff. If they wholesale desert this stuff, if it's just a black hole where money goes in and none comes out, then studios will stop doing it instantly. They'll stop doing it. Right side of history or not, they'll stop doing it. But that apparently hasn't happened yet. I don't know. I don't know. AJK says, King never liked the Shining film, but I don't like him, and I like Kubrick, so that didn't bother me. But with Lord of the Rings, I love the books, and the changes bother me. But also, Kubrick wasn't an ideologue. Uh, Michael Lombardo wants to know if I have a screener for the Timothy Chalamet Chameleon Cannibal Romance. I think I do. I'd have to check. I think I do. I have a friend who sends me lots of screeners. Auntie Gaia says one thing that's always bothered me is where the orcs, especially Saruman's, getting their meat. None of it makes any sense. There are no wizards in the Second Age. There are no hobbits in the Second Age. The Sauron is Anatar, the Lord of Gifts. He does not reveal himself as Sauron to the elves. He is this show. If it hadn't been done by ideologues, it would be the height and corruption and fall and destruction of Numenor. That's what this show would be. The appendices for the Lord of the Rings, that is by far the best story in the material that's available to these showrunners. That is by far the best story. That's what this should have been. A character running through that could be Sauron, Anatar, the Lord of Gifts, who has already made the One Ring. He leaves the One Ring behind when he goes as a so-called prisoner to Numenor. There's a good multi-layered, multi-season story in that. Oh, oh, okay. Well, the bean is here, but that means we're leaving. I'm sorry to say. That means we're wrapping this up. This can't go on forever. This is going on for an hour and a half. Dr. Bacon says that Southland's title card burning into Mordor is one of the funniest things I've ever seen. They didn't think it was funny. They thought it was great. The whole world's laughing at it. They thought it was great. It's uh, Deep in the Reen says, I think that if they want to swap out characters in familiar IPs with other demographics, it's fine as long as it's well written and not patronizing. Into the Spider-Verse is a good example. Into the Spider-Verse doesn't actually do that. Tolkien described these characters. He described who they were, what their relations were, what they looked like. This is not the myth of Arthur that has been translated and transmitted from generation to generation over centuries. This is the work of one man that is being utterly vandalized. It is like I said, and we'll wrap this up. We'll wrap this up. The end of the first season of the Rings of Power, The Lady of the Rings, makes perfectly clear that you can either be a fan of Tolkien's Lord of the Rings or a fan of this show's Lord of the Rings. There is no reconciling the two at all. The one is completely different. The Rings of Power is the showrunners correcting the Lord of the Rings. They're not adapting it. They're not adding to it. It's not an adjunct to it. It's them correcting it. What they see as your grandparents were horrible people. It's that's what the Rings of Power is. And if it sticks around, I think it lost bucket loads of money. But if it sticks around, that's what it's going to continue to be. Maddening, but true. And as a result, as one of you pointed out, we started off talking about NaNoWriMo and ended up ripping Lord Rings of Power for the whole time. But at least we can't do that again. Rings of Power is now over. So we can't do that again. It won't distract us next time. Um, so we're okay. We're gonna. Dr. Bacon says, "Is Andor at least good? Andor's terrific. Compare the writing. Just the writing is the comparison is unbelievable. It's like it was done by two different species. To the Lady of the Rings, the Rings of Power. The writing is so awful, just so awful. Where Galadriel especially, but the elves just in general, inverting the subject and verb in your sentence is not the surefire way to make it sound all old timey and Tolkien-esque. It's ridiculous. The writing in Andor is as sharp as a knife, just as sharp as could be. So well worth your time to watch. AJAJK says, Steve, title your next stream The Rings of Power. Now we get all the writing done. We just talk about writing the whole time. If I title it Rings of Power, that's probably true. But no, Rings of Power is not going to tempt us anymore because it's over. We don't have to think about it again. But anyway, I'm going to wrap this up. I'm going to wrap up this live. This has been so much fun. I had a kind of a nervous night with the bean being having diarrhea and being sick, I admit. And although she was recovering all day, the diarrhea stopped. She wasn't herself. She was listless because she'd lost a whole night and was really tired. Uh, and that, I admit, that kind of bothered me a little. And I think that's part of the reason why I was hoping for a live stream and hoping that it would be really fun. So glad that it was. This was a ton of fun. So thank you all as usual. All right, babe. You thinking of too? Hi, babe. How you doing? You're such a good girl. I will wrap this up. We will see you later. Thank you, Booktube.